now, the labor union Kiwusa has welcomed the joint announcement by Treasury and the Mineral Resources and Energy Department offering relief against the burgeoning fuel price. The union's president says this is only a temporary solution and that a more permanent solution is needed.
Any relief measure, of course, is significant in this situation. However, we're saying it doesn't really go a long way. We need to find sustainable solutions. And for us, sustainable solutions has to speak to the transport needs of the working class people in this country. We need to roll out a mass infrastructure for a public transport that can be accessible to all. We need to be able to say, how do we supply or how do you provide transport, but also energy on a very sustainable, clean, and on the basis of renewable energy sources that are compatible with climatic conditions that support our life in this planet. Those are solutions that are sustainable.
The Fuel Retailers Association is calling for the Road Accident Fund to be scrapped. The association says it wants a compulsory insurance scheme. The Road Accident Fund has been deemed controversial and wasteful. To tell us more about the proposed insurance scheme, I'm joined now by the CEO of the Fuel Retailers Association, Reggie Sibiya. Mr. Sibiya, good afternoon. So the previous guest there, the previous person we heard from, Mamitlo Sebei from Kiwusa, saying that the interventions done by Treasury and the Department of Mineral Resources around the fuel levy are temporary. We need more permanent solutions. Do you believe scrapping the Road Accident Fund is one of those permanent solutions to the ever-increasing fuel prices?
Good afternoon, Chulas. Definitely we believe so, but let's just be clear here. I think with the socio-economic conditions that we're facing as South Africans, one cannot, dispute that we need something of this nature just to balance the socio-economic scales in our country. But what we're saying to us is that, firstly, this does not really belong in the petrol or fuel space. It's really sort of like a misfit, because if you think about it, this should really be under Department of Transport. But be as it may, the other challenge that we're having is that, you've got a few population, let's say 30%. I've been Googling the number of vehicles in South Africa. I think it said in 2017 we had about 12 million vehicles registered from the NATIS report. And if you then combine that with NAMSA stats of new vehicles, one can then safely say we're looking at around 14 million or 15 million vehicles in South Africa. So you've got only about 30% of the population covering this, fund, because those are the people that pay for the road accident fund when they purchase fuel. So our idea, firstly, here is to say, let's actually broaden the contribution so that this is not a heavy burden. Because if we can look at this budget currently and share it among a wider population, it actually reduces the amount of contributions. And Tulas, let me use this. I'll just use an imaginary car that I'm driving. And I stop at the fuel service station, then I pour in fuel. I'm the only one contributing. And also let's imagine that these people in the car, let's say 4 or 5 of them are also employed. And then we then come to an accident of some sort. And then suddenly all of us require this kind of insurance to cover us. So why is it that not all 5 of us are contributing in the first place? And then if you look at, for example, accidents that are incurred at workplaces, we've got what we call Workmen's Compensation Fund, which is compulsory for everybody who's a worker. So we can have the same thing, whether it is administered via employers, it can be like the Workmen's Compensation Fund. In that way, then you've got a flat rate that's going to be far, far much cheaper than what the 30% of the population are paying. So we are collectively contributing to this cause.
I follow your reasoning.
Yeah.
I follow your reasoning there, Mr. Sibiya, if I can jump in. But it sounds to me that it's a bit different then from what we are reporting, that you're calling for the scrapping of the road accident fund. It's not the scrapping, but rather the even and broader distribution of people who contribute into this pot that we call the road accident fund. And then someone will say, but why should people who don't drive cars, some of whom hardly ever travel by car, why should those people be burdened with contributing to what is essentially an insurance scheme meant to cushion against accidents that involve vehicles?
Fair point, Tulas. So that's just one part of the employed people I was talking about. But remember, the current fund also look at pedestrians. So if you hit a pedestrian here who might not be employed, so who covers that pedestrian? Because this is about actually claims, in my understanding, where people are then going to also claim for, permanent disabilities. And so who covers that? So that's the second part of our proposal, to say this needs to be a mixed bag, and we're not saying these are the only solutions. So also we've got, with the Department of Transport, annual license renewals. So if you think about that, the bulk of this would have then been covered by the employed people via the equivalent of the workman compensation, then there is a really small balance that is left. And that balance then can be funded via the Department of Transport, when we do license renewals. I'm not talking numbers here, Tulas. I'm just talking concepts. And I'm saying there is a lot of ideas around this, you know. But the more we make it broader and also we make it mandatory for a broader community. All we were saying, it must be scrapped from fuel because it doesn't belong there, It belongs somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're saying there's no shortage of ideas. One of the ideas was explored in the past week by the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, as well as the National Treasury, and it involves the fuel levy component of the fuel price per litre, basically slashing that by R1.50 until the end of May to cushion hard-hit motorists at the pump. What do you make of that move? They're offsetting it by selling some of our fuel reserves, which means that, there won't be an immediate impact on the fiscus. But I don't know if that's sustainable going forward. What do you make of the immediate move around the fuel levy and some of the other proposals that they're making, for instance, around the inland demand levies, which are just really smaller amounts that also add up in the price per litre?
Sure. Thank you, Tulas. I've been saying for us as fuel retailers, this is a bittersweet pill. And people have been misunderstanding as what we mean by the bittersweet pill. So the sweet part of it is that we welcome the R1.50, relief, really. We don't want to even call it a benefit. We call it a relief. It's temporary. For our customers who are motorists. We were hoping that was going to be a long-term one, not just temporary. But we welcome anything is better than nothing. So, but if you look at the whole media release, that's where now the bitter part of it comes in, which is phase 2. In a way, that's also a bittersweet in its own. The sweet stuff of it is that, of course, the 10 cents demand service management levy, it's a good idea because we believe it has not fulfilled its role in the first place. If you remember how this was actually introduced, it was introduced because the department was discouraging people from inland to use 95. That's why 95 had this 10 cents demand service levy, sorry. So if you go to the coast, for example, in the coast, you only have 95 that is actually being sold, and it's cheaper than inland. And so there is no also ULP 93 in the coast, which then comes to the second element of the phase 2. which when we were called to do submissions by the department, actually, I need to correct myself because in the previous statements I've been saying 2 years. It was actually in 2018 where they called for submissions. And we made this point of saying, you are actually discriminating here. You are discriminating against retailers who are in the coast and retailers who are in inland, because now in inland, you're asking retailers to compete on the ULP 93 to make lower margins on selling that fuel. That was the key thrust of our submission. And we're saying, department, if you want to phase out ULP 93, do it properly, because it's now been proven that even in inland, there is more usage of ULP 95 than ULP 93. In the coast, all vehicles, new or old, they are using ULP 95. So if the department want to phase out ULP 93, let them do so. Let them not be opportunistic and use now the ULP 93 as a price game at the expense of retailers. Because all that's going to happen then is unintended consequences here at Tulas. Retailers are not going to afford to drop the prices because we already under recovering 12 cents on average in our margins. So can you imagine if then you put a price cap, you are squeezing the margins even further. All that's going to happen is that people are just going to, sell more ULP 95. And I hope that the oil companies will be with us here and not work against us to then actually not sell ULP 93 because we cannot sell a product at a loss.
All right, Reggie Sibiya, let's leave it there for now, but I do believe that the conversation warrants that we should revisit it in the coming weeks and months, because I'm with you in terms of following what you are saying, but I don't believe that we've had enough time to really expand on the arguments that you are making, because you are talking to various elements and trying to bring it all in within a limited space and time. So let's postpone it and say we'll pick it up again at a future date. That is Reggie Sibiya, who is the CEO of the Fuel Retailers Association. Part of what he was talking to there, and I do believe I do need to explain to you, is that part of the proposal is that there will be a price cap on unleaded petrol 93 octane, which is only sold inland. And that's the point that he's making, that it makes no sense. And if government wants to scrap 93 versus 95, if they want to scrap 93 unleaded petrol, they should do so properly, because that fuel cap will just make it simply not worthwhile for inland retailers to sell fuel at that price. So that's the phase 2 of tinkering with the petrol price to try and bring relief that he is talking to, an ongoing conversation.